Thank God, I'm free from that nightmare.
What the?
Oh, sorry, Knuckles. Looks like you're gonna have to find those pieces.
Oh no.
Oh, well. Anyways, since I just finished reviewing Sonic Adventure, why don't we rank the levels and bosses that you can play in the game? I touched on them a bit in the original review, but how do they all stack up? And since the characters share all the levels and bosses, I'll be ranking them based on my opinion of the collective characters' runs in each put together. So let's say if a Sonic run is great in a level, but an Amy run isn't, that could be a factor on its ranking. Also, for bosses, character battles and E100 battles don't count, aside from Beta. The Boss Rush Trial Mode doesn't count those as boss fights, so I won't be either. So it's time to put the levels and bosses from Sonic Adventure to the test, and rank them worst to best. Let's start with the levels. Number 11. Sky Deck. Yeah, no surprise here, but Sky Deck is the worst level in the game. It's funny that this is one of the few levels that the main trio solely plays, and yet it completely falls flat with each of them. With Tails, it's fine, I guess, but it's only the first section and you can attempt to blaze through it by flying, but a lot of the times you'll end up plummeting off stage. Speaking of, the first section of the level is probably the least offensive, but it still has a bunch of issues. It starts out with you clinging to these spinning pistons of the egg carrier. This is a neat concept, I guess, until you get to the part where you have to jump off it to move on. The platform you have to jump onto is very thin and the camera is not in a good position at all to properly land the jump before you fall off the edge. And for the most part, you jump onto a platform that's connected to the piston you're on. So why do I need to jump anyway? Can't I just let go of the thing? Also, there's plenty of parts in the early goings here that seem pretty tacked on. Like these random sections where you run down a ramp back and forth for a bit, which you could just jump over and avoid if you know what you're doing. It also controls like ass and feels very automated once you get into one of those areas. Not to mention this ladder segment that just breaks off for whatever reason. Ooh, scary. It also affects your climbing for a second, so you're either gonna just climb in place weirdly for a bit, or you're gonna end up going the wrong way and fall off the ladder. When I can, I try to skip this too. The section with the cannon at the end of it is fine. It's probably the highlight of the level, especially with Tails. In Act 2... Oh, for future reference, I'm gonna be referring to each new section of a level as a new act, so just keep that in mind. So Act 2 has you seemingly on the roof of the ship, where the wind picks up and can blow you off every few seconds. There are these parts of the map that you can hang on to, which is a nice idea, but you home into them with Sonic's homing attack. Sometimes it helps, but it can also activate at the worst times. The wind honestly would also not be so bad if not for the million enemies and lasers firing at you constantly. Seriously, one wrong turn and these laser turrets will envelop the entire screen, combined with the wind that just gives you unavoidable trauma. In addition, as you go through this act, the level starts to collapse. If you're not careful and get knocked back as you move on to the next part of the level, it'll just drop off from underneath you like it did right here. It happens very fast in this part with the planes that Robotnik sends out in the sky chase. It's not the worst, but it makes me very anxious. Finally, in this act, we get to this cannon section where you have to fire a rocket into the cannon's vent. This would be enough of a challenge on its own if not for the aforementioned million lasers firing at you while you try to hit it at the right moment. It's so overwhelming. You may die, so maybe a good idea to just take them all out before you go for the big one. Act 3 is by far the worst act in this level and probably the entire game. This one is notorious for the constant change in gravity. The layout isn't so bad until it starts going haywire, then it suddenly becomes a lot more difficult. If at any point you slip off in your ascent as Sonic, the gravity will have to snap back to its original position to compensate. That also happens if you try to take a shortcut to an area ahead that's supposed to have an altered gravity. This game isn't exactly the most polished, so this can result in, well, whatever was happening with Sonic here. I try to cut through this as quickly as possible with Sonic, but I always end up here longer than I should be. This level is long enough, and this part makes it drag the most out of any section. And if that wasn't bad enough, when you play the stage as Knuckles, you have to manipulate the gravity with this lever. You do this to open up certain doorways and move platforms to make it so you can collect the emerald pieces. This lever is unfortunately at the very top of the level, which is very inconvenient to have to keep climbing up to every time you inevitably go to an area where an emerald piece is that you just can't collect yet. It's really annoying. While other treasure hunting levels can be fun to explore, you just want to get out of this one as fast as possible. I mean, if the earlier issues weren't bad enough, your gliding can get gimped by the gravity too, so it's a lot harder to traverse the stage than others. No matter the act or character, the sky deck is a level that I always wanna go very far away from.
This must be the way to the sky deck.
Yes! What's goody guys, it's Jay Ruff and I hope you're enjoying this video. Remember that you can now become a member for only $1.99 a month to get exclusive content, like my complete Let's Play of Sonic Origins as Tails and Knuckles. Also coming soon, 1 year of GM mode in SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. In addition, at this level, you'll also get bonus privileges like special badges, name recognition on videos, and the channel. You can also upgrade to $4.99 a month to get updates on projects and more special rewards. Also be sure to tune into my live streams. These streams can happen at any time, but primarily happen on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, or Thursdays, at least twice a week. They'll usually start between 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, so stay tuned to the channel to know when I'm about to go live. You can also send in a super chat, super sticker, or super thanks to help out the channel. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell as well for updates on new content coming your way. Thanks for watching, and let's get back to the show. Number 10. Hot Shelter. I feel bad about this one, considering it's the only level the main trio doesn't play. Because of that, by default, it earns this spot. It's just a much more slow plotting level than the rest. It isn't bad at all, but since the characters that go through it are significantly slower than the rest, it tends to drag on a bit. It's easily Amy's worst level because of that. I actually kind of dread this level a bit in her story because it feels like it never ends. And the first block puzzle is neat, but by the second time the level does it, I just want to get a move on. Act 1 is pretty short, but minus the fish tank and the brief instances of water, it's a little bland, and I usually always end up falling in the water here when platforming. And like I said in the review, Big is the only one who could swim, so with him, it's not so bad. But man, Amy is so slow to climb out of the water. With Big, the stage is actually not so bad, and it's a nice change of pace to walk with him to find the pool of water Froggy is in, rather than it being right in front of you. There actually is a secret fishing spot in this level too, that I didn't even know about. That's actually pretty tricky to find, so points for that. Also, this is probably a good time to mention I forgot one big power-up you can find in the jungle in my review too. While the second act as Amy drags on a bit, Act 2 and the entire level as a whole as Gamma is actually pretty fun. Sure, it's more of a basic platformer level, but with the time being crunched, it makes you try to blast through it as fast as possible. The bowels of the ship are fun to travel through, making your way to the bathroom area and all your way to the train is interesting. I wish we didn't have only 2 levels devoted to the parts of the egg carrier, but they did their best to illustrate numerous parts of its inner workings. The train section I mentioned is probably the highlight for me, but it also wastes your time a bit because you have to wait for it to start. It also probably features Gamma's most interesting end-level boss because they actually change up the scenery in E100 mech you're fighting more than the norm. And who doesn't love a robot made up of Dreamcasts? So yeah, with Amy it's pretty lame, with Big it's alright, and with Gamma it's a decently fun challenge. Not a bad level at all, but not that great either, so number 10 it is.
Hot Shelter. E-Series location confirmed. Unlocking Hot Shelter sector now.
Number 9. Casinopolis. Honestly, from this point forward, every stage is a stage that I wholeheartedly love going through. Yeah, I enjoy Casinopolis quite a bit as any of the main trio, and it's pretty significantly different with each character's run through. With Sonic, you have to collect 400 rings in whatever way you'd wish. You can do this by going through these slots, which admittedly don't control all that well, though I've always wanted to play the Knights one long enough to finish the centerpiece of Knights' room to see what it does. Although it does take you to a bonus room if you can go through there, which is a pretty nice reward in itself. But if I'm playing Casinopolis, I'm most likely going through the Dilapidated Way, which is what the soundtrack refers to this area as. What a music track it is. And what a stage it is, really. My only complaint is that it's really short, especially considering this is all you play when you're Tails. But if there was more to this part in the stage, this might have been way higher on the list. I love going through these tunnels and collecting rings. Plus with Sonic, there's several sections you can light speed dash through that can destroy all the surrounding enemies or net you invincibility or other goodies. But God help you if you get hit in this area, because then you'll walk out of here with basically nothing to show for it and you'll likely have to go through it again. By the way, speaking of areas with dope music, the stage has 4 great tracks, including the track Dilapidated Way that I already mentioned. The Sonic Slots is a really fun casino theme that could have worked for a 2D casino level. The Knights theme is cool to hear and fits the area well, and it's been said that the theme of the main hub of Casinopolis sounds like it could be, it sounds like porno music. Anyways, this music plays throughout Knuckles' run of the level, which is probably one of his stages I like the most. This is because you get to explore this whole area and all the added stuff near the ceiling of this place. Some of this stuff used to creep me out because it felt like everything hurt you and you can't really do anything except avoid it. The lion hurts you, the pirates hurt you, and these spinning enemies using electricity hurt you pretty bad too, but at least you can take them out. Like I said in my review, I really love the continuity of the level taking place after Sonic's been there because of the statue and all of Sonic's rings used to get to the emerald. The main reason I really like this level as Knuckles specifically is because it expands on part of a level rather than just playing it differently. I really feel like a treasure hunter here, which is why I always like coming down to the casino, because there will always be something cool to find. Number 8. Lost World. This level visually is stunning in my opinion, from the old Echidna architecture harkening back to Hidden Palace from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, to whatever's going on in the sky off this cliffside. It's probably one of the best looking levels in the game. That is if you excuse the way this snake makes Sonic look in the water here. Yeah, this section is a bit clunky, but overall I enjoy the first act quite a bit. This is mostly due to the long hallways you get to just sprint through. I enjoy going as fast as possible here every time I come this way. The aforementioned snake section can drag on a bit, and if you slip up it's really annoying to try and make it back up. Dying here and having to do this stuff over is a chore, but the next act is really interesting. In Act 2, you run through this dope backdrop into this chamber. By the way, where are we? Are we outside? What's going on here? Either way, inside the chamber you use these mirrors to light the way. It's a bit dark, but it's a unique challenge that doesn't slow your run all that much. However, there's this one part here at the end that gave me an issue for the longest time. For some reason, I didn't realize you have to lightspeed dash here. I assumed there was just a platform obscured by the darkness for a while, but no. Dashing through here leads you to Act 3. These short islands surrounded by water remind me a lot of Hazy Maze Cave in Mario 64 for some reason. Going through here leads you to the Indiana Jones boulder, which is an overlooked part of this game that deserves more praise for how cool it is. I mean, look, that thing's on fire too! The next half of this act takes place in this one confined chamber, which can sometimes give me issues because of the anti-gravity panels. It's hard to control when walking here, but it's nowhere near as bad as the gravity manipulation in Skydeck. This is also where you search for the emerald pieces as Knuckles. It makes more sense as a Knuckles section and is large enough that I enjoy it, but it's not very open. What I mean is that it's difficult to move around in, and it feels like your options of maneuvering to get to each piece are more linear than I'd like. Still, this level's architecture fascinates me enough to enjoy the ride, and the music in Knuckles' section is something I could fall asleep to. It's enchanting. Lost World raises a few questions that are left unanswered, but that doesn't mean it's not a damn good level either way.
I'm a snag. I'm a slither little snicket snag.
Number 7. Ice Cap. From Sonic 3, it's back. And similarly to that game, this stage has one act that rules and one that I think is just fine. It's one you play with Sonic and Tails, as well as Big. In Act 1, you're only Sonic, and it really doesn't last very long. Though for the short time that it's there, it's a pretty charming stage. It gives that cozy, snowy vibe, especially with the music. It kinda sucks that you're not here for very long. If you know where to go, there's more to this level with these orange pads, but it's still fun playing it straight. Then for what seems like the longest act, Act 2, we're in this creepy cavernous area. I say creepy because for whatever reason, the music turns from cozy to cautious. Seriously, I feel like nobody talks about how much of a switch up this music is from the previous. There's also no established reason for Ice Cap to have this music if you're going by how it is in Sonic 3. No matter what version of that game you play, Ice Cap's theme is just good fun. Anyways, to talk about the level, the platforming challenge here is pretty interesting. You have these icicles on the ceiling that you jump off from to navigate to the other side with. If you're on them for too long, you'll slip off. This used to bother me when I was younger, but honestly, it's no trouble and adds another reason to try and get through quickly. Even though this place is confined, they still give you a decent amount of straight paths to move fast with. I also enjoy the further incorporation of the orange pads. They never show up in the series after this, so it's good that they made good use out of them in this game. You have to do this big runaround in order to make this giant icicle fall and open this gate. It's a nice payoff to going through this whole area. As Big, this act is your entire level, and believe it or not, they add a lot more to this section. If you talk to that pain in the ass ball of light, she bluntly tells you,
use the boulders to break the ice.
Although Big is heavy enough to break it, so these boulders are pointless. There are other areas that can be broken, so keep your eyes peeled. But like I was saying, if you travel through these pools of water, you can actually find a lot of hidden goodies on a lure power-up. It also adds to the lore of Ice Cap because you find these giant fossils everywhere. It makes you think about what could have left these here. But how come you never find these in Sonic 3's Ice Cap? Well, in that game, you actually don't explore the underwater areas that much, so it could have really been there all this time and you wouldn't even know it. This is probably one of the more fun big levels to explore, so definitely take a look when you get the chance. If you don't, all you get is this one small pool of water, which is kinda lame. Then we make it to Act 3 that Sonic and Tails go through, and this is easily what propels this level to the number 7 spot. This is the iconic snowboarding section, which is a direct reference to Ice Cap Act 1 in Sonic 3. This time you can actually control your snowboarding and really go nuts with it. There are ramps you can jump, alternate pathways, an avalanche, and with Tails, there's even more added stakes with it being a race against Sonic.
Hey, hey, hey!
Not only all that, but what really sets it over the top for me is the music track, which has the best kind of funky saxophone. And the name of the track is even better. Be cool, be wild, and be groovy. Hell yeah, dude, this stage rips. Also, a cool thing you can do with those ramps at the end is if you hit all of the ramps at the end in order, you might end up overshooting the end of the stage entirely. The height you get is absolutely insane, and you may even crash into the very back of the end zone. All in all, a trip to Ice Cap is a snow day you'll never forget.
Use the boulders to break the ice.
Don't tell me what to do.
Number 6. Windy Valley. If this level is only number 6, you should take that as a good sign because I absolutely love this stage. Here's the thing, if this stage had you go through just as Sonic and Tails, it probably would be higher, but I'm really not the biggest fan of Gamma's run through of this level. It entirely takes place in Act 1, which granted you get to see much more of as Gamma. It still just seems rather boring and honestly might be the level of his I enjoy the least. You'll likely destroy the bridges by accident, dooming yourself to death. There's dead ends everywhere that you just have to force yourself through, and it starts the trend of Gamma's levels ending with a boring boss fight. A later level makes up for the lacking boss with a better stage up until that point, but I've never been as fond of Windy Valley as Gamma. This doesn't extend to the other two though. With Sonic, we have a lot more fun in this Act 1, where you can use your homing attack to snack some goodies and go along these huge chains that take shortcuts. Homing attack chains would become a staple in Sonic to the point of being overused, but in this level they actually require some skill to pull off and reward you for doing so. We also have these hidden runways where the wind will carry you, which while scary to my younger self, were always a pretty cool way to transition to another part of the level. In fact, if you come back to this level with the Lightspeed dash, you can take shortcuts past these sections almost entirely, so this stage is good for replay value too. Act 2 is the tornado, which is pretty linear. You just go up to the top, but I don't recall you ever getting to go through one in any other Sonic game, so it's pretty unique in that. Plus, it gives a whole extra meaning to the name Windy Valley. They also continue to include the orange pads, which I love, so bonus points for that. Act 3 is the main area, where you once again play as both Sonic and Tails. This is the level where you first get a true sense of how fast you can really go with Sonic in 3D. It blew me away the first time I played it. In fact, every time I do, I just love watching how quick Sonic's feet move. At times growing up, I would imitate this exact run from this level, all the time envisioning Sonic on those long, narrow pathways. A lot of people tend to critique this level, myself included, for how often you'll bang around into the walls in this act, but it never really halted my speed or momentum entirely, so I can't say it takes all that much away from the level, yet it would still definitely be better without it. With Tails, if you know exactly where to use your flight, you can slowly descend all the way to the end, which is clearly an oversight by the developers, but I don't care. I actually love this. I mean, playing this level normally as Tails is fun enough, but getting to absolutely break the level brings a sense of euphoria only a gamer can conjure with gaining this much power. It's also worth noting that Windy Valley was almost much different. Some fans were actually able to find a nearly complete version of Act 3 in the game's code that looks incredible. The areas you run through are a lot wider, so while you don't get to experience that incredible speed, that bit gets traded for a much greater feeling of freedom, which I can dig. If you can, try and find a way to play this act for yourself. You might love it more than the original. As for me, I love Windy Valley as is. It definitely blew me away. Number 5. Final Egg. This is the final level for Sonic and Amy and the first level for Gamma. It's actually a stage where each run through can be pretty different depending on who you play it as. With Sonic and Amy, your Act 1 is a bit smaller, but it changes to better suit who you're controlling. There's a lot of badniks and death traps everywhere when you go through as Sonic. With Amy, there's more obstacles in your path to get Zero hot on your trail, but he won't ever be a problem. Amy's level goes from Act 1 to 3, but Sonic heads through this sweet tunnel to go through his incredible Act 2. Act 2 has this amazing remix of an already great theme. It's another level where you can really exploit Sonic's speed, but you can't go too crazy because you'll end up falling into a bottomless pit, even though it's clearly not bottomless and Sonic has been perfectly fine falling from even greater heights. Even though you can have an issue with these platforming challenges, it's actually pretty fun, like avoiding these hammers, navigating down these platforms to the elevator, plus some more homing attack chains for other goodies. There's really not much else to say about this act because it's really just the ultimate Robotnik level in 3D. After he's given us shit all game, it's fun to just have a full-on assault on his base. Act 3 gives you a return to the earlier music, and as Sonic, you have even more platforming challenges over these large chasms. You can use these fans to float over to each section, an early precursor to Shadow the Hedgehog with this falling section, and these rooms with these infinitely respawning badniks that you can just use the Lightspeed attack to just utterly decimate until you get bored. I love traveling through here with Sonic. I actually get kinda sad when it ends. In Amy's Act 3, we have a bit less to work with. It's not all that great and a bit forgettable, but it isn't as long as drawn out as Hot Shelter, so it gets a pass. This one section where you have to pick the correct path is usually quite annoying, but like me, you can get lucky and get it right away. Not a bad one. In Gamma's level, you don't really have much of a level, it's really just target practice. But there's something really awesome about firing away at dummies made to look like Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. It's a simple yet fun run through that I can dig. Overall, Final Egg has a solid place in this game that thankfully makes up tenfold of what the other Robotnik stages lack. I honestly wish there was more of it, but for what we got, I'm spoiled rotten with Final Egg. Also, whenever I get to Act 2 as Sonic, I can't help but think about that one Sonic short from years ago.
Get better, get better. Kill Sonic with a laser, and then he'll be dead. And I can do my evil stuff.
Number 4. Emerald Coast. We finally have the appearance of the first level in the game here, and what a way to get us into the gameplay. This one is just gorgeous. It truly sets the table for what a great time you're gonna have in these levels. This one truly has everything. I could just about memorize it entirely from beginning to end, and there's a decent amount of pathways to play it differently every time. Both acts have a lot to offer the player as far as speed, iconic moments like the Orca chase, and notable set pieces that set each section apart from one another in this level. I think this level has the most going for it out of any level, by which I mean there's just a lot to it, similar to Final Egg in that way. I also think it's the first time in Sonic we get a straight up beach level, and while Seaside Hill and Sonic Heroes is a great successor to it, I think Emerald Coast will always be best in capturing the beauty of the beach and the ocean in a Sonic game. I also think this is easily Big's best level. A lot of it is due to the music and the vibes it brings. Just look at how I reacted in my Let's Play.
But this music, man, this music, man. Oh, I hit the monkey. Oh, the monkey. Whoa, look how clear the water is.
Yeah, I know that's not what the colors look like in the actual level, but that's just what we saw. I'd imagine that's what was going on in Big's head. Still, this is easily the best backdrop to any fishing level. I really enjoy just chilling here and fishing, doubly so when you find the oasis. This was the first level I explored a lot with Big, and I enjoyed just chilling here for a while. I know Big's levels are seen as the worst of the game, but I will fight for Emerald Coast as Big. It's just wonderful. Gamma's Emerald Coast, however, is pretty much 1/5 of Sonic's, which is fun, but I really wish there was more to it again. Yeah, really repeating that theme of so much potential with this game, but it rings true in a lot of aspects. At least we don't get a lame boss fight at the end, and we could just grab the frog. Either way, when you think of Sonic Adventure, this is probably the first level that comes to mind. It's no wonder why it was included in Sonic Generations. Well, the 3DS version, that is. And without Emerald Coast, we wouldn't know that Orcas just fucking have it out for Sonic in the 3D games. So for that, this level takes the number 4 spot.
Frog capture complete.
No, hold on there. Come back, please.
Does not
Give
compute.
me my friend back. I'm begging you, please.
Does not compute.
Number 3. Red Mountain. Another thing Sonic Adventure did well was add a new area to Angel Island, that being Red Mountain, one of the best levels in the game. I really love just how open it is with both Sonic and Knuckles. This music gives you that feeling of adventure. It's one of the levels that suffers the least from being shared among characters. Usually it's quite obvious when a certain part of the level is specifically made for a character, but with Knuckles and Sonic here, each run through of Act 1 feels like its own experience without changing much at all between both. It's crazy that they actually did that because you essentially end up going through the exact same places, but it never once feels repetitive. With Sonic, it's yet another fun, adventurous mountain level, similar to Hilltop Zone from Sonic 2, only in 3D. I also love how it truly looks like a red mountain, and it becomes obvious why it is one due to the lava underneath the surface. With Knuckles, this is by far his best level. It's a lot larger and less confined, but not too large because you never feel like you're gonna get lost in it. There's a great sense of joy I get when I jump off a tall cliffside and glide for as long as possible until I safely land at another cliffside. It's just so much fun, I don't care how long it takes me to finish. I said as much in the review, but I truly feel like if every Knuckles stage was as open as this one, Knuckles treasure hunting levels would be remembered a hell of a lot more fondly as a whole. This might be the level that comes the closest with my enjoyment of my Sonic and Knuckles runs. There's so much to it with the aforementioned lava, riding the rockets to each cliffside, and transitioning from each part to the next is just seamless. Then in Act 2 we head inside the mountain to a sweet rave party, filled with lava pits aplenty, smiling cacti, and prisoners? Fun fact, these are actually known as ghosts. I guess that makes sense since if you look closely, they're completely hollow on the inside. Cool thing to think about with this act is that it technically could be the return of Lava Reef Zone from Sonic and Knuckles. We never saw the outside of it, so maybe that's what Red Mountain really is. Anyways, even though it's an indoor area, you really get to run around pretty fast. You might want to try and get through as soon as possible with the ever-rising lava, but once you know where it goes, you can avoid it pretty easily. It's like a great game of the floor is lava, except in this, the floor is quite literally lava. I love jumping over the lava from platform platform to platform, using the lightspeed dash to take shortcuts, and homing attacking all the enemies and goodies I could find. At the end, there's this gauntlet of hazards too. It makes me feel like a badass when I'm able to get to the end without getting hit. And there are these rather large and creepy spiders that don't do anything but add to the unnerving nature of this volcanic cavern. We also have Gamma's section, which feels more suited to Gamma than Windy Valley. Even though a lot of it is just Sonic's Act 2, it's a lot more fun when there isn't a bottomless pit below you and you can just fire away at everything. I actually like going fast as fuck with Gamma in this point. It's probably a forgettable sequence for most, but I don't know. It's one part of Gamma's story that always stuck out for me for some reason. The boss fight at the end is still lame though, but Red Mountain is easily a top 3 stage in the entire game. Just don't come here if you just want to ride the zip line. Number 2. Speed Highway. I know that many people probably put this at number 1, and for good reason, but honestly, when I really thought about it, I had to give it the runner-up spot. However, that shouldn't undersell it whatsoever. Speed Highway is one of the best levels in Sonic history, 2D or 3D. It's a marvel of level design and pure high-speed gameplay. If every Sonic stage was as good as Speed Highway, this would probably be the best 3D Sonic game by a long shot. It's that good, so let's talk about it. In this level, Acts 1 and 2 are miles different and miles apart. You know, when I typed that, I didn't realize the highway pun, but I loved it so much I left it in. Act 1 is played by Sonic and Tails and is essentially the same with both until the end. You start in this narrow corridor with a long road ahead of you. Off to the side are some buildings that you can actually climb onto the top of. It's actually an insane detail that they aren't just non-interactive set pieces. This stage is probably the most open in the game, as I'm certain I haven't even found all the ways to make it to the end. There's really so many ways to go about it. Doubly so as Tails, because you can intermittently fly between pathways at your leisure. There are a lot of these moving platforms that work well to spread out the speed sections. They don't bring you to an abrupt stop though. If you can use your brain power to quickly figure out how to use them to keep the speed going. Honestly here, I don't find myself bouncing into walls much either, and I genuinely feel like I'm in more control here. Keeping the speed going in this level is actually essential to making it through to certain pathways, like being able to run on this building. The set pieces in this level are also just so memorable. The spotlights on these buildings that feature these rockets, as well as this helicopter that takes you to different points. And who can forget the bells in this level? I haven't mentioned the badniks much in this video, but the cop badniks, while annoying, are one of the most recognizable from this game, and they're only seen in Speed Highway. With Tails, you race Robotnik instead of Sonic, and it's easily the best and most challenging race in the game. If every race was like this, Tails' story might be the best in the game because it makes it much more fun racing this flying adversary. I also enjoy his voice lines a lot more than Sonic's.
You think you can keep up with me? What? He's caught up!
I especially love at the end of the level with Tails because you can really just fly from platform to platform and it feels so free. But just be careful, it's really easy to get carried away. At this point with Sonic though, we probably get the second most memorable section in the game next to the Orca from Emerald Coast. We have this famous Mach speed section down the tallest building in Station Square. You run automatically for the only time in this game, and the speed is just insanity. You can only move left to right, and I love going on runs where I can avoid everything and get all the items in ring boxes. More than any time in this game, this part informs the player of the absolute peak of Sonic's speed power. Even without going super, he's truly supersonic. After this run, we get to the next act, which is probably the sole reason that it lands at number 2 and not number 1. Because this little city is clearly only built for Knuckles, and Sonic really has no business being here. With Knuckles, it's a bit confined, but it works pretty well as a first level. Yet I find myself beating it too fast for me to actually enjoy the level, and I miss out on enjoying one of the best pieces of music in the game, At Dawn, which sadly didn't make it into Sonic Generations even though Speed Highway did. I honestly wish this act was made into its own level. It's different enough for Speed Highway to work. Why not just expand it and call it Town Hall or something? I mean, in the next game we got City Escape and Radical Highway, and those are both fantastic levels. It could have worked in this game too. I guess hindsight's 20/20 there, but I really do love Speed Highway. That's really all there is to it. For many, this is the best level in the game, and you'll get no argument from me. However, I do have a bit of a preference, so let's get to number 1.
Tails, wait for me!
No, shut up. And my number 1 favorite level in Sonic Adventure is... Welcome to Twinkle Park. That's right, I've gone on record in my Let's Play and my review of Sonic Adventure that my favorite level is without a doubt Twinkle Park, so I guess it's not much of a surprise. Though I did deliberate for a while if Speed Highway was better, and I nearly changed my mind. This is mostly due to Amy's and Big's runs of the level, which I'll talk about first. In Big's level, it's essentially just a tutorial for the rest of Big's gameplay, and I'm for sure this time there are no other paths. There's nothing really special about it, so if you know how to fish with Big, it should be no problem. However, if you know me, you know I struggled at this damn pool forever, so I was not the biggest fan of it. It's even documented in my Let's Play. What?! Yet when I finally get down to knowing how to play and even somewhat enjoying Big's gameplay, I can't hate this level as him for it. It was my own error, and I love being here and listening to the main track anyways, so more of that is fine with me. With Amy, this is also her first level, and you start out at this pool and run around it to hit the switches to get inside. It's a good way to get you used to her playstyle on top speed. Once you get inside, you get her exclusive creepy castle section with the spooky ass music. I still can't believe there's a random baby laugh in it. For some reason, this music piece is called Fakery Way, which I don't understand. It just makes me think it has something to do with Shadow the Hedgehog.
I found you, Faker.
That's all besides the point though. While I'm not the hugest fan of this act, it's very unique and it's literally only made for Amy, so I have to give it props for that. It actually is the majority of the level for her, and I really enjoy the idea of that, even if the mirrors in the level make me feel like I have no control of Amy. I actually wish this area was expanded on, similar to the Town Hall section of Speed Highway, and maybe even make it into its own level. Maybe if it was expanded upon, it would have resulted in a much better level. I don't like the area after it as Amy, but it's essentially just the exit, so it's no big deal. Then we get to Sonic's version of the level, which is all around the best level in the entire game with any character. It starts out on Twinkle Circuit, where you get to pick your color car, and they all have different stats. This is awesome that they put the thought into this level that far to even do that. Of course, that has to do with the Twinkle Circuit sub-game as well, but being able to pick whichever one you want, especially if you're familiar with how each one controls, is really thoughtful of the developers. The music here is also iconic, because it's a remix of the opening scene from Sonic 3D Blast. In fact, a decent amount of songs from 3D Blast are remixed in this game, but of those songs, I think this one is the best track. I also just love the design of this place. The starry night sky is such an incredible view, and the layout of the track is classic 3D Sonic, even though you don't run on it without the hover cars. Hopefully you pick the best car and increase your speed by collecting rings, because with that you'll enjoy the ride as much as Sonic. Act 2, the music track discussed earlier, Pleasure Castle, as Sonic, it's its best iteration. I cannot forget to mention again, the opening of this act is probably the best of any act, where you land in a rocket-powered roller coaster. Why there aren't more roller coasters in Sonic games is beyond me, because I feel like they'd go together pretty well. I mean, Sonic and amusement parks is a concept we haven't explored all that much in general. Well, besides the entirety of Sonic Colors, of course, but you get my point. I just find the level design here is just so right. It feels like an actual real place Sonic is running through. I know it sounds far-fetched, but you're hopping along a bunch of tall buildings with incredible views, just kind of trying to find a way through here that isn't naturally what the place is made for. I love to sequence break and take massive shortcuts when possible. If you're good enough, you can bypass some sections and get extra goodies like extra lives. It really feels like you're going through a real-life amusement park, trying to maneuver your way around it. Hopping from building to building gives me the feeling of so much freedom. This whole bowling minigame is fun too, and it's really easy to get strikes and rack up tons of rings, even if you mess up. This carousel makes a brief appearance, but it's such a memorable set piece. Speaking of set pieces that are memorable, probably one of the most memorable in the entire game is at the end of the level, where you see this grand opening to the giant castle with a large red carpet entrance. It's honestly breathtaking and hard to believe it's in an actual Sonic game. Oh, and I can't forget these weird-ass badniks. So much could be said about them, but I think I'll leave them alone. There are another like the cop badniks in Speed Highway that are exclusive to this level and end up being iconic for it. Overall, I really do love a majority of the stages in Sonic Adventure. I mean, Hot Shelter is alright, and Skydeck is just awful, but I love 9 out of the 11 stages in this game, and Twinkle Park is without a doubt my favorite stage in Sonic Adventure. But we're not done yet, because we still got all the bosses in this game to rank, so let's get right to it.
Get a load of this! 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 Get a load of this!
Number 11, Chaos 4. Yeah, it certainly had to be this one. If you look up the definition of monotonous in the dictionary, you'll find footage of each of the main trio playing this boss fight back to back to back. It isn't a terrible fight, all things considered. It's really just the circumstances of it that make it so terrible. You play this boss fight after seeing the same cutscenes, after the same lame Knuckles fight, then you play the exact same fight with all three. Then you see the same cutscene after, and if you're Sonic or Tails, you're forced into the same lame Sky Chase section, where you really don't experience much Sonic gameplay for a bit. Every time I get to this part of the game with one of these characters, it just becomes a massive chore, and I just want to move on as quickly as possible. Doesn't help that my favorite stage with Sonic is right after. Now, talking about the boss itself, I just think it could have been made so much better. For one, you shouldn't be able to stand on the water. Make falling in and avoiding chaos underwater part of it. Next, make Chaos do different attacks against each character. Like have him jump high where only Tails can reach him, or make him try and burrow at the bottom of the lake where Knuckles has to dig him out or something. And most of all, Chaos moves in the same predictable patterns until he just decides to come out of the water to wait and get hit. Just do this whole thing differently. It doesn't even feel like gameplay. Where's the fun here? Yeah, this boss sucks. Not much more to say. With Sonic, Tails, or Knuckles, it's real bad.
No problem. I'll make him eat dirt.
Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
Number 10. E101 Beta. I said that the E-series at the end of the levels wasn't going to be on this list, but really they're pretty much the same as this. It's such a nothing boss fight. It isn't annoying to play though, so that gives it points over Chaos 4, but you really can just mash the B button to lock on and attack Beta over and over until you win. That's really it. This boss fight can just take however long you want it to. If you want to collect rings to just make sure you won't get hit, sure, but you can just as easily lock on to Beta's attacks and stop them from getting to you. They could have added more attacks for Beta and some hazards for the boss fights, like maybe some Badniks or Sonic doll targets out of the ground to block Beta. What they did with this boss fight was all around lame, lazy, and could have been better.
What? So you want to come along with us, eh? Okay. We could always use a spare set of parts, I guess. Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
Number 9. Chaos Zero. The first thing you do when playing this game is fight Chaos Zero. It's not bad at all, but it's not just the first boss, but the first time you control a character in the game in general, so you can't expect it to have a lot to it. But for what it does, I do like it. I love the setting for it. The town hall area of Station Square in the rain and surrounded by police cars is a cool look. It's a good arena for a boss fight since it's so confined. What I really love is his camera angle where Chaos jumps to the light posts, but he only usually does this right before the last hit, so rarely you'll see it happen. In fact, you can end this boss fight really quick without even seeing many attacks from Chaos, because you only have to boop him on the head. And you can do that essentially whenever because Chaos always leaves himself open. Yet I really can't blame the developers here, because they had to make it easy enough for the player to get used to the controls and beat the boss. But yeah, it's a first pretty decent boss. 9 and up on both of these lists are a thumbs up.
Come on, you big drip. Where you going?
Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
Number 8. Egg Hornet. This is the second boss you face in the game, and it's really a standard Robotnik boss fight from the Genesis games brought to life in 3D. Now, a lot of those fights are fun and inventive, but are the thing that caps off those levels, while here it's just an ambush by him out of nowhere. In my mind, this lessens its impact, and I don't particularly like the boss arena as much either. However, it's placed just above Chaos Zero because with Sonic you can break it so easily by just spamming your homing attack, which I love doing. Also in Boss Rush, when you have the Lightspeed attack, you can use that to do the same exact thing. With Tails, you have to play this boss fight straight, but it's pretty decent on its own. It's definitely my least favorite Robotnik boss, but not by much.
You big loser.
Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
Number 7. Egg Walker. Yeah, and I meant really only not by much because I only prefer Egg Walker a little bit over Egg Hornet. Not to say both bosses are less than stellar, but they're in the lower half of this list for a reason. This is Tails' final boss and exclusive to him alone. It is the first boss on this list that is a decent challenge. The Walker jumps to one side and carpet bombs the other. Then when you get close, it sends shockwaves towards you as Robotnik shouts, "Get a load of this!" These are both decently challenging to avoid. If you don't try to immediately hide under the Walker, the bombs can easily get to you. And if you do hide under the Walker, even flight doesn't lessen the difficulty of avoiding the shockwaves. The one thing I really don't like about this boss is that it's hard to tell where the hitbox is where you're supposed to damage the boss after you take out its glowing legs. As a result, I end up getting hit when I don't think I really should. Other than that though, it's a fine boss and an excellent climax to Tails' story. Could it have been better? Maybe. But I do enjoy it. Plus, I'll never forget this line from before it began.
You fool. Away, before I make mincemeat out of you.
Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
Number 6. Chaos 2. This boss used to give me some trouble a while back, until I realized there are way more weak points than I initially thought. I like this boss a bit because it's probably one of the more intimidating Chaos encounters, being in probably the most confined place for a boss fight. Plus, Chaos's roar right before it starts is canonically the first time he tries to intimidate us. I also like the numerous different attacks Chaos uses, way more diverse than 4, and actually probably way more effective. The only problem being that you might not see them if you really know what you're doing. Chaos constantly blocks you if you try to attack him head on, but if you glide into his form as a ball, he'll leave himself open for a brief moment before being able to attack again. Normally, you're supposed to wait before he freezes after one of his attacks. I really like him shapeshifting into a ball and covering the area and electrifying it. It shows how Chaos really uses his form being water very creatively, which I feel doesn't get used enough. At the very least, they gave Knuckles an exclusive, fun boss encounter that I feel makes his story better. I wish we could fight this form of Chaos again. I actually just really like its design in general. Awesome job there.
Fine, give it your best shot.
Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
Number 5. Zero. Ah yes, this might be a surprise to some, but I really do like this boss fight. It's Amy's one and only boss, which makes me think she could have had a couple more good ones in her. Sure, it doesn't really make much sense that the electrified gate is even here at all, especially because that's the only thing that lets us harm Zero. But the fight is fine enough to where I don't let it ruin it. Honestly, this might even be the best part of Amy's story, which is fantastic for this boss fight to do because it pays off the entire story due to it being at the end. Zero does the same attacks he does throughout the adventure, which makes zero sense. Actually, it makes a lot of sense. Which makes sense, so I won't criticize him for not changing it. In fact, I admire the consistency. Why would he change anything up now? If he had other attacks, then he should have used them earlier. Getting to bonk this annoying robot in the end is so satisfying. I at least wish I could send him off flying at one point like Amy does in the cutscene before it, but it works pretty well for her final boss the way it is. And his theme, expertly titled Zero the Chase Master, is awesome stuff.
Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
Number 4. Chaos 6. This is a very well-designed boss. I just love all the crazy attacks Chaos does against you. They're so elaborate and creative, genuinely hard to avoid. Everybody knows he'll try to inhale you, but also he does a hard-to-avoid shockwave. He shapeshifts into a disco ball-like object and shoots lights out at you in every direction. Then he uses his newly acquired tail to take a swipe at you. All in all, some really cool stuff, but there's a couple issues. One being that, yes, in Sonic's version of the boss, Robotnik giving us the only thing we can use to defeat him is pretty dumb. And 2, if we use the Lightspeed attack or the Maximum Heat Knuckles attack, we do double damage against the beast, which would most likely prevent us from seeing those other cool attacks. Now, I did say this was an issue, but it's not necessarily bad, because I love that they included this tactic of being able to defeat this boss this way. If anything, I'd say they kinda messed up by not applying this to any of the other bosses you face before getting these power-ups. Still though, it was an incredible attention to detail to add it in. This theme is also incredible, and I'm glad they decided to change this from the usual Chaos boss theme. It truly emphasizes that this time, Chaos truly needs to be destroyed before he gets too powerful. It's gone too far. Thankfully though, it went far enough to bring us a great boss here. Oh yeah, and Big fights this too, but I mean, what is there to say about that?
Go on and get out of here. I'll do the rest.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
Number 3. E101 Beta Mark II. Yes, even though I said the other E-Series boss fights are pretty lame, this one on the other hand is one of the best ones in the entire game, because this one actually tries to be a boss fight. It actually does something different. There was clearly effort put into this. I love the full circle moment of fighting Beta again after not knowing what happened to him. I love the setting of the fight on the egg carrier during the day. I love the design of the upgraded Beta. It's one of my favorite Robotnik robot designs ever, and I honestly wish they got more out of it than just this. I mean, since Gamma won the fight, I suppose he's definitely the best of the series, but technically Beta's last shot also led to Gamma exploding as well. It's debatable though, because it's only after Gamma sees the pictures of the birds in his subconscious that he stops resisting his destruction. Anyways, let's talk about what makes this fight so good technically. You'll bitch slap your attacks away, so you gotta wait for an opening, and they're brief, so pay attention. It's genuinely hard to avoid his attacks. He sends so many projectiles after you that you can lock onto, but at a certain point it's easier to just run away. At the same time, he'll come and charge you, which is also hard to avoid. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he's able to put you down, but it's never frustrating. It's a good good challenge, and I know it gave me issues as a kid. And then probably what makes this boss so cool, Beta just shows how unhinged he is, blasting away over and over with these massive beams that turn into large explosions. Believe it or not, these are easier to avoid than the other attacks, but they're so cinematically beautiful to watch from that angle. I just love when he does this attack. Just make sure to shoot him at the right time or else he'll just keep doing it. This is a fantastic boss all around from any perspective, and it doesn't get talked about enough. From a story perspective, a technical perspective, an emotional perspective, it caps off Gamma's story brilliantly, and Beta's theme that plays just encapsulates everything you'll be feeling when playing. Simply brilliant.
Gamma. Beta.
Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
Number 2. Perfect Chaos. I know, it's a bold choice to put the final boss at number 2, but that's not to discredit it at all. I truly do believe this is a really well-made boss fight. This battle and the scene before it, pardon the choice of words, but perfectly plays off the absolute, again pardon the words, but chaos that Perfect Chaos has been built up to be able to cause. The entire battlefield is essentially being fought within Chaos. Since he controls all this water, this makes this boss a bit of a miniature level. No other boss fight does this. It's easily the most uniquely constructed yep. That's a nice butt. It's easily the most uniquely constructed boss because of it, which being as it's a supersonic boss is a perfect continuation of the setup of supersonic boss fights in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Running through this destroyed city at supersonic speeds, gliding over the water is exhilarating. Not only that, jumping off ramps and collecting boatloads of rings is just so satisfying. What isn't satisfying is facing off with the beast itself, because it does not play one bit. He has several different, very effective attacks. He shoots beams of light at you, sends out water tornadoes, and even unleashes an atomic breath akin to Godzilla. These attacks won't kill you, but getting hit by any of them, even once, will most likely kill this run for you, and you'll have to slowly enter Chaos at the end and let him respawn elsewhere to have you try again. But this wastes your time heavily, which is exactly the point. As is standard supersonic fare, if your ring count hits 0, you lose. And believe me, just one mess up and you're gonna be scrambling to make up some rings and hit Chaos quickly. You don't have infinite rings either. You're constantly running through the same parts of the city, and the rings carry over from each time you rotate, so you need to be smart with how many you collect. All this being said, man is this a thrill ride, and the music being an epic Crush 40 masterpiece just fuels that thrill. Sure, it changes in the second half of the fight, but the theme that plays then is intimidating and intense. It makes your heart sink if you're running low on rings. This is the best way to cap off this adventure in my opinion, and it was remembered so fondly that it was recreated in Sonic Generations. Apparently this is how they always wanted to have this boss fight be, which adds to the idea that it's like a miniature level, because they expanded that idea in Generations. All in all, this is one of, if not the most iconic boss fight in 3D Sonic, and one of the most iconic in Sonic's history. It started the trend of epic 3D supersonic boss fights with kick-ass Crush 40 themes, and it's one of my favorites in Sonic history. But it's not number 1.
Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
And the number 1 boss fight in Sonic Adventure is... Get a load of this! It's the Egg Viper! This is the best Robotnik boss fight of all time, point blank, period. I love this more than any other. It might just be the best boss fight in the Sonic series. I'm dead serious. Robotnik and his machine have an intimidating presence to them, and the grand music piece encapsulates that. I've said a lot of the same words throughout this video, but just chalk up all the positive words I said for all the other boss fights and apply it to this one. It just simply does everything right. It's the perfect payoff to Sonic and Robotnik's intense battle throughout Sonic's story. Sonic's really out to get him here, and they both pull out all the stops to ensure and prevent that respectively. Robotnik has so many different attacks and different phases. It escalates every time you do damage to him. He goes from firing 3 lasers at a time, telling you to
Get a load of this! Get a load of this! Get a load of this!
He then fires a big ass laser, and then starts just chasing you and firing wildly into the field. This attack always gave me the most shit. It's so hard to avoid and makes me more anxious than any other boss attacks. Also to mention the field, it's 2 sets of platforms in precarious positions above a bottomless pit. Any hit landed by Robotnik could be enough to knock you off, meaning you really gotta avoid every single hit at all costs. It makes you play at your best to beat this, and if you don't, you'll be at it for a long time. I've spent entire afternoons dying over and over again, and it sucks, but it's a respectable challenge. I don't don't hate it, because it's fair. It's not cheap. Even when Robotnik gets to the point of eliminating the terrain bit by bit, I still feel like if I stay on my toes, ready for anything, that I can be ready for anything. It's awesome that he actually learns from all the times you attack him, and changes up how he goes after you, and thus you have to change how you respond. After you've been through every phase and completely depleted his health bar, he still has one more trick up his sleeve.
Watch out! He's up to something.
Before it became somewhat of a recurring theme in the Sonic series, Robotnik launches one last surprise attack to defeat you. At the last second, he can nullify your perfect run. You might think this is cheap, but you have 3 out of 4 safe platforms. That's enough of an odds to pick the right one. Plus, you have a good amount of time to move as well. It honestly is one of the few times where Robotnik's intelligence is actually on full display. He's a real threat, and that's something I love about the Adventure series as a whole. It has some goofy Robotnik moments as always, but there are times where he really levels his game up and gets super serious. Easily why Dean Bristow is always going to be my Eggman. I am just so fond of his presence, performance, and characterization in these games. And this is his peak, gameplay-wise. You will never have another boss fight as good as this for my money. And that's why the Egg Viper is the best boss in Sonic Adventure.
Get a load of this!
Alright! Fuck! Enough! I think that joke's run its course at this point.
Get a load!
Shut it! Alright, well, those are my lists ranking the levels and bosses in Sonic Adventure. I hope you enjoyed them, and let me know in the comments what you think about them, and how you'd rank all the levels and bosses. I hinted at it in the review, but next time, we're diving into a show that I grew up watching, as we talk about the Sonic X story arc that covers the events of Sonic Adventure, and we'll see how it stacks up to the game itself. Remember that you can become a member of the channel for only $1.99 a month to get exclusive content and access to other special perks. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell as well, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and peace. These levels can go by pretty quick, and with only 5 of them, Knuckles' story, like Tails, doesn't last very long unfortunately. But it starts here in Speed Highway, which isn't all that challenging. But if you need some help, the red ball of light is here to directly lead you in the direction of where an emerald piece is. Which I don't find all that entirely helpful, because it can just easily clip through a wall and make it hard to see where it goes. Yeah, that ball of light does a bit more harm than good.
Look,
What the fuck are you doing?
it's chaos. I've found chaos.
You ain't found shit, you're just running up the water bill.
I think I know where chaos is now.
Oh yeah? Where's that?
This way.
So yeah, Speed Hideaway as Knuckles is fun. I kind of just wish this area was Knuckles exclusive, because it was clearly...
Get a load of